It would be very easy for me to call Paradise Rot my perfect novel. That's not to say it's my new favourite novel, but rather it just encapsulates and embodies and expresses everything that I love in a piece of modern fiction. Paradise Rot was written by the celebrated and internationally famous Norwegian singer-songwriter Jenny Høval. It was translated by Marjam Idriss, who did an amazing job translating the visceral, gut-wrenching atmosphere of this novel. I love it to pieces. I absolutely adore this book. It is perfect for me, and I'm going to try and explain why. Paradise Rot falls into a category, a genre of fiction that I love increasingly more and more, and what might be my favourite genre of fiction, even though it's not really a thing, but I want to talk about it at some point in a separate video. The genre of what I'm going to call gross women. There are so many great modern writers out there who I would categorize as gross women. I might have to come up with a better term for it. But if you look at writers like Sayaka Murata, Melissa Broder, Otessa Moshfegh, these women are writing fascinating, gripping, disgusting, visceral, bloody, gory, scary, and often very sexual and queer pieces of fiction. And this, Paradise Rot by Jenny Høval, also fits into that bracket, and it is my favorite kind of fiction. Stuff that is explicitly sexual, that contains body horror, that makes you feel uncomfortable, that utilizes the senses and atmosphere, that plays on different genres, that is often surreal or frightening, or at least makes you feel kind of uncomfortable and often angry at unlikable protagonists. As for what it's about, our protagonist, Jo, is a Norwegian woman who has moved to a town in a place. It's not entirely clear where it is, but it's either in the UK or possibly Australia, because Jenny Høval herself studied in Australia. I'm not sure, but I picture it as being in the UK because it is foggy and grey and dark and gloomy. She's moved there for university, she's in her early 20s, and she needs a place to live, as all students do. And she has ended up becoming the housemate of a local woman called Carol. Carol lives in a former brewery turned apartment building, and it's a weird space. The space itself is a character in this novel. It is an enormous open-plan space, what you would picture as a single floor of a factory building, and all of the rooms are divided up by plywood borders that aren't even a person's height. They don't reach the ceiling, kind of like cubicles in an office building. These are just plywood borders that kind of separate out where the bedrooms, the bathroom, the kitchen are, but it's mostly an open plan space for these two women to live in. There are no real borders between the two of them. This is a pseudo-gothic novel. It is claustrophobic and contained, and it really plays on your senses. Jo is an inexperienced young woman. She's never had sex, she's not entirely sure what her sexuality is, and she has met Carol, a woman who also explores herself sexually in different ways with people of different genders. Very early on, we get the world from Jo's perspective, and it is a very tangible one. And that is something that persists all the way through the novel. This tangibility, an obsession with the body, what the body produces, what the body contains, what the body is made up of. Very, very early on, we are introduced to a kind of obsession of Jo's, which is urine. She's in a bathroom and she's peeing and she's looking down between her legs and watching her own stream of pee hit the porcelain. She's listening to it, she's looking at the colour of it, and this is something that goes on all the way through the novel. At one point early on, she's in a hostel and she hears one of the other girls go to the bathroom and pee. Later in the novel, she goes to shower, and before showering she uses the toilet and she sees that her housemate Carol used the toilet and didn't flush, and she sits there and she enjoys the fact that their fluids are mixing together in the water beneath her. There's a real focus on bodily fluids, on what the body is, what it makes, and that feeds into the grander theme of rot. And that's in the title. The English title, Paradise Rot, I think is gorgeous. One of the most beautiful titles I've ever come across in a piece of fiction. Again, early on, and this is a very, very short novel, there is a focus on a piece of fruit. There are apples in their apartment that are rotting. And there's a moment where Jo is sort of pressing her fingernails against this rotting apple and carving in little dents and scratches on it while she's on the phone. Apples rot away, fruit rots away, the people here seem to be rotting away. They are in a shared space that keeps them relatively safe from the outside world. And the only real intruder is their neighbor, a man called Pim, who they both kind of sexualize, flirt with, and experience things with. And Pim is the only person who encroaches on their space, and he's a man. This is sort of a broken, rotting paradise for these two women who are sexually charged and attracted to one another, but also attracted to Pim. Maybe attracted isn't the right word, tempted by, intrigued by, but there's also a sense that they're sort of making each other jealous by interacting with Pim at all, even just on speaking terms. It's very hard to summarize all of the themes and ideas that are going on here. There is a Garden of Eden aspect. One of the chapters is called Eden. You've got the fruit, you've got temptation, you've got these women who are letting the fruit rot away, almost as if they are avoiding temptation. This is, in effect, a lesbian novel. It is a novel by a woman about the female form, about female physicality, about female bodies, both external and internal, the beautiful and the gross combined, because all bodies are beautiful and gross. And Jenny Hval really leans on that. The idea of being tempted and of avoiding temptation. And what happens when you avoid temptation? The thing you're tempted by disappears. In this case, it rots away. In this case, it is not being fed. If you lean into temptation, you give into it, you embrace temptation, you will enjoy the fruits of your labor. You will enjoy paradise, but instead, paradise is rotting away here. This is a book about what happens when you avoid temptation, and it's not a good thing. And I find that really enticing and beautiful. As someone who often gives in to their temptations, I find that beautiful and alluring and sexy. And this is a strangely sexy novel. It's a novel that is frankly full of piss, and yet it remains very sexy. I think the fact that it's so visceral, the fact that it is a book about the sounds, the smells, the sights, the things around us, that really feels like ASMR in book form. It makes you feel very alert to the things around you, to every little movement, to every little sound. And there's something very sexy, very sensual about that. Regardless of what these sights and sounds and feelings are, it doesn't really matter. There's still a sensuality to it. Our protagonist is a young and confused woman, and she is enjoying physicality. She is enjoying sensory overload. She's enjoying the world around her. And this apartment is a strange, claustrophobic space, a frightening space in some ways, a very gothic space where she is trapped, and only occasionally do we venture outside. We spend a lot of time outside of the apartment before she moves into it, and once she's there, it kind of becomes a sort of labyrinth. The fact that there are borders in the apartment, but they're not borders of any substance, makes it feel like it's a shit labyrinth. It's like a twist on the gothic genre, the gothic tropes, the gothic house. Quite often in gothic films and novels, a house is a labyrinth, a house is a maze, it's a frightening, unknowable, monstrous space that you feel lost in and frightened by and dwarfed by. Here, it's the exact opposite. It's a very knowable space. It's a space where Jo understands everything intimately, and there is no secrecy, there is no privacy, there is no border between her and her housemate. It is an inversion of the gothic. Everything is almost too knowable rather than being unknowable. There is so much imagery and beauty here, and I don't know if any of my interpretations, any of the feelings that I got from this book are correct, but is there an incorrect? This is just a beautiful, visceral novel. It is about bodies. It is about physicality. It is visceral, it is beautiful, it is sexual and sensual. It has an obsession with the physical form and beauty, especially the female form, and it embraces the fact that the female form is a beautiful and disgusting thing. This is such a tangible, disgusting, gross, beautiful piece of fiction. I want to lick it. And it's tiny as well. It's 150 pages. I read it in a day and I was just lost in it, captivated by it, moved by it. It is so sensual. This is now one of my favorite novels. I am amazed by it and I love the fact that I could just dive back into it whenever I want and read it in a single day and just enjoy it. There is something captivating and strange and beautiful in its visceral nature. God, I love Paradise Rot. This is sexy, disgusting, beautiful, brooding, harsh, gross novel. Really, really love this thing. Please check out Paradise Rot if you are anything like me. And I'm not entirely sure what I am, but if any of this has appealed to you in a strange way, check out Paradise Rot. It is a doozy. It is gorgeous. Subscribe for books.